We're going to preview the 2025 regular season schedule for the Indianapolis Colts. We don't know the schedule. We don't know when these games are happening, but we know who we're playing and we know where we are playing them. Aside from the game in Berlin, that's the only one we're still questioning or we're still unsure about across the board. So where are we at right now? Right, the Colts walk away with another disappointing season. They missed the playoffs again. They lost the division again. Round out the season with another middling 8-9 record. How much hope is there for next season is the question, right? And let's find out, right? How much hope is there for next season? There's a lot of factors that go into that, but one of them is the schedule. And one of them is who are the Colts playing? How likely it is that they pick up wins against those teams. Let's break down this schedule, the opponents, the likelihood that the Colts will win each of these games off first glance right now. We still have the draft. We still have free agency. We still have plenty left to go before we get to this point, of course, in the calendar. But let's break down this schedule. The Colts have 6 games against the AFC South. We know that happens every year. They have 3 games against fellow second-place finishers, which is partially unfortunate because the Colts were 8-9, maybe around a third-place team level, but they're going to be playing other second-place teams. So some teams finished second and made the playoffs. Some teams finished third and made the playoffs, right? So it's not a totally fair way of measuring these teams, but it's really the best that these schedule makers can do, and it provides some nuance into the schedule. So the Colts play 3 games against fellow second-place finishers. Colts finish second in the AFC South. They play Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and Miami to fill that void, right? So Atlanta was the team that missed the playoffs. They were right there at the end of the year. They fully could have. Maybe they make the playoffs if they start Penix earlier in the year. Atlanta's a team right there that the Colts will be facing. Pittsburgh did make the playoffs. It didn't do much while they got there, but the Pittsburgh Steelers made the playoffs, and the Dolphins were just on the outside looking in as well in the AFC. So some winnable games there. I think that the Pittsburgh game and the Atlanta game are difficult. The Miami game, I think, is a little bit easier, perhaps. They play Pittsburgh on the road and Atlanta and Miami at home off the top of my head. We'll talk about these games in order here in a second. And then the South is paired with the West. So that totals 8 games where the AFC South will play the AFC West. That's the Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. And they'll play the NFC West. So that's the Cardinals, 49ers, the Seahawks, and Rams. The number one thing, if you just look at a graphic, the number one thing is that you notice is just how rigorous this road schedule is going to end up being. We have 3 categories. We have division games, we have long shots, which is really just the Chiefs game, and some swing and pivot games, because some of these road games are against difficult opponents. They're going to be difficult to win, especially on the road, but this is where the Colts can swing their season in their favor or potentially let it completely fall off the rails in this span of 4 games. First of all, they were 1-2 in road division games last season. In my opinion, you have to turn that into 2-1, right? The Jaguars are a mess completely. They've hired a new head coach. They've, I think, just fired the general manager today, if I'm not mistaken, or yesterday rather. But Jacksonville, right? They're a mess. Have to pick up a win on the road against the Jaguars. We know that's largely impossible for the Colts to achieve. Maybe this is finally the year. The Titans, who are the Titans going to draft, right? They have the number 1 pick. Are they going to keep the number 1 pick? I personally don't think so, but are they going to draft a quarterback? Do they get Cam Ward on this Titans team? Is it Travis Hunter? There's going to be some prolific generational talent that the Colts are going to have to contend with most likely, but that should be a win on the road for the Colts as well. And then the Texans are obviously a tough team, difficult opponent that the Colts lost to twice this past season. Texans are a team that were injured last year, but are potentially rounding into form for next season. Those division games, they were 1-2. I think if they're going to make the playoffs, you have to at least expect that they turn that into a 2-1 mark for this season. They play the Chiefs on the road, which the Chiefs are obviously still playing this season. Maybe they're coming off another Super Bowl when we get to this point in the year. Undoubtedly the toughest game on the schedule at the Chiefs. It's the best team that they're playing against. It's also the team that they're playing on the road. That's a long shot. The Colts beat the Chiefs at home a couple years ago. It was a big deal, massive game, really inspired hope in this franchise. The Chiefs on the road, whenever that game occurs, is going to be massively difficult. Toughest game on the schedule. That's one that if the Colts win, then we're having great signs, but we really just expect to pencil that one in as a loss. Then we've got our swing and pivot games, and this is what I want to spend the most time on because I think they're the most influential or consequential, perhaps. On the road, the Colts will play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Seattle Seahawks, the LA Chargers, and the LA Rams. This is the first time they'll go to LA twice in the regular season. They'll play both teams, the Chargers and the Rams, while there. These are the more evenly matched tests that will dictate whether or not Indianapolis is viewed as a playoff contender, right? These 4 games. Now, it's unfortunate, and there's more, right? I think the Texans game is in this category, and I think the Falcons game and the Broncos game is in this category, but those are home games, right? There's a lot of swing and pivot games that the Colts are going to play against teams at their level because most of the NFC West, the NFC West was around their level, right? The AFC West was a little bit better, but the NFC West, right? The Rams made the playoffs. We were questioning whether or not they would for most of the year. Seahawks were the main team that was potentially going to prevent them from doing that. Cardinals outside looking in, 49ers outside looking in, way outside looking in. These are teams closer to the Colts level, right? The average of the NFC West, the center of gravity in the NFC West is similar to where the Colts are in terms of quality standpoint as a team. AFC West is a bit better. And then, of course, you have those 3 games against teams that are supposedly at their level being fellow second-place finishers. And AFC South is up for grabs. There's a lot of games that the Colts play with teams at their level. The Steelers, the Seahawks, the Chargers, the Rams, the Falcons, the Broncos, the Dolphins even. Cardinals, 49ers could count too, the Texans. Most of these games are against teams at their level. They have a couple games against objectively bad teams. That's the Raiders, that's the Titans, that's the Jaguars twice, both for each. And then we have 1 game against a team way above our level, the Chiefs. Most of these games are in the middle. And the best example is these road games, these swing and pivot games on the road. It's going to be difficult. The Colts play the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Chargers, the Rams. All on the road, extremely difficult games, extremely difficult tests. This is the category of the schedule that's the most crucial because if the Colts win 2 of these games, totally could be a playoff team. If they win 3, I think they definitely are. If they win 1 or 0, you're probably on the outside looking in there. So again, the Steelers, playoff team. Seahawks were nearly a playoff team. Chargers and Rams both were. This is a situation where the Colts are going to have to win a couple games against teams better than them on the road if they're going to surpass these teams, at least the ones in the AFC, and qualify for the playoffs. The AFC is very heated. It's very difficult, and there's going to be a lot of close games, in theory, on the schedule of the Colts. They're going to have to win down the stretch. And the Steelers game, great example. Seahawks, Chargers, Rams, all great examples. This swing and pivot game category is what I find to be most consequential and most influential as we roll into next season. And then these home games. Again, you play the teams in your division. They were 2-1 in that category last season. They've got to at least maintain that, in my opinion. Jacksonville, Houston, Tennessee. I think at home, at least go 2-1. Because, again, the Jaguars are a mess. The Titans are rebuilding. The Texans are probably good, and that's the one loss I would allow. But for the most part, 2-1 or 3-0 at home in division games. That's what we're going to need to see for the Colts if they're going to achieve the level of success that we want from them. They've got some routine victories on the schedule. They're most of their opponents that they play that are quote unquote easy, they play at home, right? One of their easier games, the Giants at the end of the year, was on the road. Obviously, that's not the only reason why they lost, but certainly it didn't help. So Vegas, they play the Raiders at home. Arizona comes to them. San Francisco, the Colts catch at home. Miami comes to Indianapolis as well. Who knows what the future of Tyreek Hill is? Who knows what the future of the direction of the San Francisco 49ers is, right? The Cardinals, they should be on the up. They should be improving. Marvin Harrison Jr. coming to Indianapolis. This Raiders game will be a big one as well. At home, they shouldn't have very many issues against these teams. If this is a playoff team, these should be 4 wins across the board. Maybe the Cardinals end up surpassing expectations and end up being a playoff team. Same could be said for the 49ers. Still, I think these are games that it would be important to see them win at home. And then we have some trap games, right? And what I would categorize trap games are as team or games against teams at a similar level to the swing and pivot category on the road. But trap games are at home because you look at home games and you are much quicker to chalk or just to write them off as wins for the most part. They play the Falcons and they play the Broncos at home. These were both playoff teams or at least close, right? Broncos were right there, 7 seed, fringe playoff team, nearly got outpaced by the Bengals, but were able to stave them off at the end of the year there. And then the Falcons were a team that was on the final week playing for an opportunity to make the playoffs as champion of the NFC South. Both of those teams, well, I suppose the Broncos made it, but the Falcons failed. again, two playoff teams or two teams that are at least close in the Falcons and the Broncos. Those are trap game opportunities. You can you can write those off as wins. You shouldn't. Of course, we saw how the Colts game against the Broncos went last year on the road. But this is an opportunity, right, for the Colts to potentially win a couple more key games similar to that swing and pivot category, except these ones are occurring at home. They'll play once in Berlin. So one of these games is happening in Germany. I personally expect it to be the Raiders game, because the Raiders are bad, right? They're a lower team, and usually we see some of those lower quality teams play overseas when we get to that point. Jacksonville's known for playing in London. I don't think they'll pull a division game over there anyway. So you look at some of these home games. I think Atlanta's a big one, although that one could be in Germany as well. I think this Raiders game is going to be in Germany. We'll see which one it ends up being, but we're going to lose one of these home games at Lucas Oil. We'll still have 8, but one of these 9 games is going overseas to Germany. We'll see which one of them that is. So then we have a way too early ceiling and floor. And the thing I don't like about ceiling and floors is I know who I am. I know how I am, and I know that it's going to be the widest range possible. And that's kind of exactly what happens. I think the true ceiling is 14-3. That's never going to be realistic ceiling. It's never going to happen. The floor is 5-12. That could happen. And realistically, I think the Colts could be 8-9. They reach 14-3 if they just win all of their games at home. And maybe they lose in Houston, they lose in Kansas City, and one swing game. That's just not going to happen. I think realistically the best they could have is maybe 11-5, which would be a massive improvement. 10-7, 11-6 or 10-7 perhaps. I think that's what we could see for the Colts if they were to win the division or be a quality wildcard team. That's the best they could do realistically. 11-6, 10-7. The floor is 5-12. This could happen if things fall off the rails. I'm seeing the Colts win only one road game because of how tough that schedule is in this scenario. One routine victory, right? One trap game or some combination of the two, and 2 home division games against some of those lower teams in the Jaguars and the Titans. 5-12 is possible. That could happen. That would be a disaster. That'd be very sad. But in a team that I think is capable of potentially having a double-digit win season next year because of how close they kind of have been, and I know that mindset is dangerous. People always talk about how the Colts are close. We like our guys. Let's just run it back next year and see if we can, make up the difference in the margins and maybe make the playoffs. I don't like that mindset because I disagree with it. But still, the Colts have been close. Potentially a team that, if they see significant improvements, could have a double-digit win season. Realistically, they're going to be 8-9, and I think they'll split across the board. I think they'll drop some games. I think they'll win a couple big ones on the road in that swing and pivot category. We'll see how the draft and free agency impacts these predictions, but right now I think the Colts are going to be punished for running everything back, right? They changed defensive coordinator and changed nothing else, and I think they'll be 8-9, an average team again. And then we're going to have questions about what the future of the franchise is. Maybe that means the end for Steichen, Ballard, Richardson, all of them. It's much easier to get rid of all of them next year because that's another year of failure, and that's another year of Richardson not being truly the guy, another year of Steichen struggling, another year of Ballard struggling, missing the playoffs, not winning the division, something along those lines. Maybe we see some sweeping changes next season. Obviously, we're kind of past the point for that to happen this season. So we're in a position where the Colts, if they elevate to a double win season, great. If they fall by the wayside and end up 5-12, not great. I think realistically they'll be somewhere in the middle, 8-9, which is almost worse than both options because you don't make the playoffs and you don't have a quality draft pick. And the Colts, again, are stuck in purgatory, picking 14th. Again, looking forward to next season when really there isn't much hope for change. That's what the Colts are going to play. It's 14 teams at 17 games. It'll be a difficult schedule by all accounts, but a schedule that hopefully the Colts will be able to manage. We'll see how the rest of the offseason goes. We will monitor the Colts throughout the offseason. Again, about once a week, we're going to talk about this team. And we'll have some offseason college football talk as well on the other side of the week. Regardless, stay tuned for more Colts updates, I suppose, as the draft comes up and the free agency comes up. We'll see how the rest of the offseason goes for the Colts. That's all I have for you on that topic, and I hope the Colts can do something better than 8-9 next season.